If you're watching this, chances are you have SOPs, but nobody's using them. Well, then stay on and I'll give you my surefire recipe to make your team actually use your SOPs. My name is Benjamin. I've founded 3 service businesses. I'm also a fractional COO and work with tons of different service businesses, agencies, professional services, you name it. And SOPs are always a topic. The first reflex, if you feel that your business is outgrowing its operational structures, is to build SOPs, and it's a great starting point. One of my companies is actually SOP Heroes. We write SOPs for a living. But oftentimes SOPs just collect dust. Nobody's using them. And there's a couple of things you can do within your SOPs that I'm going to talk about next. But also there's one thing that you need to do to actually make them work and to have your team use them. I'm going to get to that after my SOP tips. So there's 5 things that you really can do with regards to your SOPs. And one is involve your team when you create them. It's just the most important thing. Like if you write down stuff, this is how it works, which is fine at the beginning, right? It's just you hire your first 2, 3, 4 contractors or employees. It's fine. But as you mature as a company, you want to involve your team in specifying how things are being done. Involve your team, then you just have more buy-in from the start. Secondly, you have to make them very easy to use. Store them centrally, have a directory of sorts where people can find them. Nothing worse than having a Google Drive and only if you have the link you find the SOPs, then nobody will actually look at them. So things like Notion work well. Having a visually accessible database is great. And also today with AI, you can have a company brain of sorts where you have a chatbot that can query your SOPs for real-time information and answers. Notion has its own AI. So there's many ways of building SOPs in a way that are easily retrievable. Then the third thing is keep them up to date. There's one thing that's worse than having no SOPs, which is having outdated SOPs. They're not accurate anymore. So you don't want to give your team obviously false input on how work is to be done. Fourth, and this is I think the very obvious use case for SOPs and also the best way to make them work is use them for onboarding. So if you have a fresh new employee who's not biased by the way they've always done things, hand them an SOP. They learn it right from the start, and this is your best way to drive adoption over time. And then lastly, if you take your SOPs, translate them into template, and I've talked about the digital maturity scale for a while, you move from basically have specified SOPs to having digitally supported processes. And that's a great way of making sure your SOPs get used. So translate them into Asana template, Monday.com template, into a Google Doc template, whatever you're using, whatever the SOP in question might be. Try to actually make a work product or an artifact out of it. And then people will actually use it. The only thing that you then have to do is to basically make sure you update both things in sync or just replace the SOP with the actual template, which is often the smarter approach. So these are 5 things that you can do to your SOPs to basically improve adoption. Now, this will likely not change whether or not your team uses SOPs. And now here's the uncomfortable part. This is how you actually make SOPs work, which is you have to constantly manage your team. It's the unfortunate truth. So SOPs itself will not make sure that people operate in a certain way. If Sandy thinks she knows what she's doing, she will not look at the SOP. If somebody performs work in a way that is not in line with your SOPs, they won't know until they look at the SOPs, and they won't look at the SOPs until they know that they've done something wrong. So it just doesn't work. What works is meet with your team regularly, discuss execution, and if you find anything that's not aligned with what you want it to be, then use the SOP as a vehicle to rectify, right? Look at the SOP together, say, is this how we want to do things? If yes, great. Let's please all do it in the future. If maybe this is outdated and the new way that Bob is doing it is better, then take that way, right? But use the SOP as a tool to basically massage the process, improve the process over time. That is really the way that SOPs, I've come to believe, are meant to be. You use them as a working tool to align your team on how you operate. Not as, here's the resource, go do it, but rather as, can we jointly agree that this is how we do things? Then let's write it down. And the next time we look at it, we have the written basis of what we agreed upon. And now everybody go do it. Because in the meantime, people likely won't look at your SOPs except for the scenarios of onboarding, etc. Right? So manage your team day to day. Use the SOP as a vehicle to improve operations, continuous improvement for processes over time. And then really you get the benefit of the SOP, which is everybody works in a standardized way, because ultimately that's what you want. You don't want SOPs, you want work to be done in a certain way. Follow along if you want more operations videos like this for your service business. My name is Benjamin, I'm a Fractional CEO. Please subscribe and like if you enjoyed this video. Thanks.